Bring in Lisa Daftari, foreign policy expert and editor-in-chief at the Foreign Desk. Lisa, great to have you on the program. This Wall Street Journal article is concerning, if not unsurprising. Take a look. China's Xi Jinping planning Russia visit as Putin wages war in Ukraine. That's the headline. Look, in case there was any question whatsoever about the Russia-China alliance, the fact that these two countries are coming together, Xi now planning to meet with Putin. He says his goal, quote, in quotes here, Lisa, is calls that nuclear weapons not be used. But what's the real goal of this meeting, Lisa?
It's no surprise that they're growing much closer together, and you can add Iran's regime to that list as well. These are our enemies growing closer to each other, finding new bedfellows, finding new alliances, and trying to evade U.S. sanctions, trying to really stick it to the United States, particularly after Biden's trip over to Ukraine. Look, from the perspective of Putin, look, he's a grand dictator. This is Putin's world. We all just live in it, right? So he's watching the United States grow deeper and deeper into their commitment into the Ukraine war, billions of dollars. Then the United States decided to send tanks. They decided to train Ukraine's military. And now this, physically going over there and doubling down on his support. So, of course, he's going to call this a provocation. Of course, he's going to use this moment to flex his muscles, and he's going to pull out of the START treaty. He's going to say, there's going to be more in the future. And, of course, meeting with China, the Achilles heel of the United States, buying weapons from Iran's regime. We know those drones were used in Ukraine, as a matter of fact. I mean, if we're sanctioning Russia, why were they allowed to buy weapons from Iran, or be able to get weapons or other parts from North Korea, or grow closer to China? So what we're doing is isolating our enemies, but not to the point that we are diminishing them, but to the point that we're empowering them and allowing them to grow with our other enemies.
Lisa, the White House is now condemning Vladimir Putin's decision to pull out of the New START nuclear treaty that you were just talking about. Take a listen to this, and we'll talk on the other side.
The announcement by Russia that it's suspending participation in New START is deeply unfortunate and irresponsible. We'll, of course, make sure that in any event we are postured appropriately for the security of our own country and that of our allies.
So without this peace treaty between the world's two largest nuclear arms powers, how much could this destabilize the entire world?
Yeah, the world just became a much more dangerous place in the last 24 hours, that's for sure. But again, Russia, he came back on his pulling out of the treaty and said, well, this doesn't mean that we're going to, go after this part and this part and this part of the treaty, meaning we're not going to throw away the entire treaty. We're going to abide by some of it. There has to be consequences to our actions. So when Biden decides to go over to Ukraine, this is the action that Putin decides will be the one-up on Biden's trip over there. So, of course, he knows that the United States will now scramble, as we are. And to call this unfortunate and irresponsible doesn't really cut it, right? So the United States will scramble to try to get back into this treaty. He knows the Biden administration is all about treaties. He's read them so entirely well that it shows what a grand, really, leader and dictator Putin is. He knows exactly the weaknesses of the Biden administration, unfortunately, and he's playing them out very, very nicely in this way.
Don't want to go to the soundbite because it's a little long, but in summary, President Biden says NATO is stronger than ever. Is that true, Lisa? Because it seems to me you have a number of NATO countries that aren't paying their fair share again after Trump got them to pay their fair share. Doesn't seem to me like it's, quote unquote, stronger than ever. What do you say?
No, it's not as strong as ever. And exactly as you said, that we've had for decades that countries have not been paying their fair share, or even really believing in NATO or its role on the global stage. Right now, you have such a divided map, and that's for many reasons. It's on how to curb Russia, how to curb China, how to curb Iran's regime, how to deal with these forces. You have the European Union not really wanting to curb or get involved in a lot of these global crises. You have the Biden administration getting involved and basically waking up the beast, but not being able to curb these enemies in a way that's meaningful and really curbs them. I mean, President Biden had the opportunity to sit with Xi Jinping a few months ago. They had a 3-hour meeting. None of this was brought up. I mean, Biden left there giving himself a pat on the back and saying, well, they're not going to invade Taiwan. Is that actually true? Day after day, we see that provocation becoming closer and closer and more heated. And in this example as well, now they're becoming closer to China. These nations know exactly what they're doing, and they're not afraid of NATO. They're not afraid of Biden. And just for the optics of all of this, of course, we're here in the United States. We don't want there to be a war in Ukraine. We don't want China. We're rooting for the Biden administration, and we want them to stand tall on the global stage because that reflects our nation. But at the same time, the optics of all of this, we can't even control our own borders. Look at our southern border. And he's over there, Biden, trying to control Ukraine's border. I mean, it looks a little silly. And of course, again, Putin is picking up on these weaknesses of the Biden administration. We have a huge hazmat crisis in our country, and Biden hasn't decided to go over there to visit there to even address this issue. But again, he's over there with Zelensky visiting Ukraine and walking through the damage in his country. So, Putin is exactly picking up on all these weaknesses, pointing them out, and trying to really make a pariah out of Biden, especially on this trip.
Scary times. Lisa Daftari, thanks.